So scripts. I hate scripts. Can you do without them altogether? Is it possible to just sit down, write some bullet points, and go from there? Or do you need to write the whole thing out and then, once you've written your whole script, come down to bullet points? Which way round is the best way to go?
So vital for anybody who speaks in public at any given time. I've got a chapter in the book, as you know, called Scripts, Friends, and Foes. The trick, the key to success in delivery is to keep the script your friend before it has an opportunity to become your foe and to get in the way. I am actually a big fan of scripts at the outset of a project. The reason is when we are processing what we want to say from a psychological perspective, there is a disconnect between what's happening in our brains, in our prefrontal cortex, as we determine what will be valuable for another person that we speak to, and what actually comes out of our mouth, our language processing skills. They don't always connect with one another. We think they do because they all live within the same body and the same mind, but they're actually two different things. So I am a big fan of getting ideas out of your head and onto paper or onto screen. It's the same thing that we do when we're trying to process through a crisis or a challenge. If we just think about it, we'll spin and spin and spin, and that death spiral becomes really problematic because we don't solve anything. So the great thing to do, talk about it, get it out of your head and out into public. And the best way to do that with a script or with your content is to just go ahead and write it down, type it out, whatever works. But that is not a script. All you've done now is gotten it out of your head and into a form where you can look at it, judge it, make some determinations. The next step is to organize all that big jumble of thoughts into a logical order, pyramid principle. It's this, then this, supported by this, and therefore this. Once you've done that, now you have a logical order to your information. You probably have far too much content. You've got to whittle it down. I've only got 6 minutes to speak, or 25 minutes in my session, whatever that works, and you've got to chop, 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 chop. And then you've got to figure out, where can I insert myself into all of that content? How can I tell a human story blended in with all of that content that I just laid out? Once you've done that, now, boom, script. My suggestion is, rather than wasting time revising and revising and revising and revising that script, which is a death spiral of its own that can take you right up until the minute you speak, look at it and say, okay, now that I know the top points that I want to hit, the order in which I want to hit them, and the general idea of what I want to say, learn it, get rid of it. Set that script aside, because if you hang on to it, it becomes a crutch. It becomes something that restricts you rather than opens you up to great, strong communication. Learn it, give yourself enough time. Once you feel like you know mostly what is taking place on that script, it no longer serves you. Then it becomes your enemy, it becomes your foe. So that's when I say get rid of it. So if you're worried about missing something, if you don't stick to the script, I promise you, you will never miss your most important points, because they're most important to you. The small details, the fine facts and figures that you're worried about leaving out, your audience doesn't care about them. And they won't remember them anyway. They'll go back next week remembering what you told them, and they'll research those bits on their own.
Yeah, no, I've got to the end of talking and thought, oh yeah, I didn't say that or that or that. But the talk still lasted as long as it was supposed to last.
Right.
And obviously, yes, subconsciously, I ditch those things. Or sometimes as you're talking, you see what's happening with the audience, and you I'm going to skip that. I'll go to the next point, because you read them, I guess.
And a lot of speakers are not that natural. They have to stick to the plan. Getting them to loosen up, look at their audience and say, I'm losing them. Let's just move on to something that's going to hook them. Or, ooh, they really seem into this. So rather than move on, let me maybe expand a bit on that, because they're clearly connecting to it. Only putting the script aside and speaking from your heart and your natural knowledge allows you that flexibility.
So what's your top tip for learning a script? When you say learn it, how do you make it stay in there? Do you play it back to yourself on a tape or something like that? Go to sleep listening to yourself talking? What do you do?
So no, never go to bed trying to learn your script. Never cram at the last moment to learn your script. Audiences can see that a mile away when you finally get in front of them. You mentioned before bulleting, bullet points, and how important they are. So what I always recommend to a speaker is, you've got your content. Now go back and look at it and say, all right, within that particular paragraph or that segment, what are the most salient, the most interesting points within that chunk? Give yourself 3 to 5 points within that particular section of information, maximum. Again, I think this is important. I think this is most important. I'd like them to remember this. Great. I've got 3 big ideas within a paragraph. Then whack those 3 ideas down into individual bullet points that are 3 to 5 words maximum. The idea being, I can remember that little bit, those cue words, and that's really what they are. It's not scripting, it's cues. The cues trigger in anyone who knows their topic. If you're speaking about something you don't know anything about, well, you're going to have to learn that script because you're speaking from a point of nowhere. But if this is something that you already talk about on a regular basis, all you need is cue points to trigger your own expertise. You're good at your job.
And there is in the book, if someone hasn't got a clue where to start, then you've got a nice template in there for building up a script and some of the things you might want to cover. And it's surprising how you could make that apply to almost any kind of delivery. So that's a really good thing. I'll show that on the while I'm talking, it will appear by magic on the screen there so people can see.